Originally planned to release at the end of 2020, Kena Bridge of Spirits would receive multiple delay announcements to the disappointment of fans who were eagerly awaiting to play this visually stunning and unique game. Well, thankfully, after all those delays, Kena Bridge of Spirits is finally here for the PC, PS4 and PS5. Now, my very first impression of the game, when I was walking through that dark hallway at the start of the game, illuminating this dark hallway with my shield of bioluminescence, going up the stairs to be exposed to the very first scenery of lush forest, I had one thought.
That's fucking beautiful, mate.
Guys, welcome to my review of Kena Bridge of Spirits. This is going to be a review for the PC game, and I do not have any comments on the PS4 or PS5 versions because I just don't have them. I will be keeping this review fairly spoiler free as well, so don't worry about major spoilers. I'll only be showing you footage from the first couple of hours of the game. And as always, if you do like this video, please go ahead and leave it a like. It is the most useful thing that you can do for my channel, and hit the subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000. We're less than 200 away now, so any help you can give to that would be greatly appreciated. I've also made a Pixel Sean Discord. Link to that down in the description below. If you want to hang out, talk about games or whatever, feel free to join. Let's get into the review. So what is this game? Well, on the surface, it's a third-person action-adventure story, but underneath that, it's a whimsical, emotional tale of restoration, repair, and moving forward. Some people may take issue with how short this game is, however, I felt that the length worked well for the story being told. I'd much rather have a game leaving me wanting more rather than a game feeling like it's overstayed its welcome. For those who are wondering, this game can be completed in about 10 to 15 hours, just really depending on how you play. I'll keep this story section quite vague, as the story really makes up a large portion as to why the game is so special. However, in this game, you play as Kena, a young spirit guide who, through the use of her abilities, aids spirits to move on from the physical world and move into the spirit world. You start your journey by entering a forgotten village, and from very early on, you can see that things aren't how they should be. Spirits are lingering, trapped, and are becoming corrupt. They are unable to move on, and this is where you, the spirit guide, comes in. It was really rewarding and quite intriguing for a game to let us listen to the stories of the trapped spirits in an effort to help release them. The constant breadcrumbing peppered throughout the gameplay really kept you invested in the spirit's story. You start to form a connection to the spirit, seeing their past and trying to figure out what's holding them back. It made the experience feel more personable, getting to know the story of the spirit that you're helping. This in turn made the whole process a lot more satisfying when you eventually do release the spirit. It drives your motivation and makes this gameplay mechanic all the more rewarding. As a consequence of the trapped spirits, the land around you becomes corrupt. It is up to you and your team of rot to restore the land to what it once was by releasing these spirits, expelling the corruption, and working your way to find out just what or who is behind trapping these spirits. There are moments full of inspiration, triumph, but also moments that are truly disturbing and dark. And this is what I love about this game. It's not shy to enter into more mature, darker themes of storytelling. Themes like death, mortality, and just loss. However, it's not all doom and gloom though, as Kena herself and the supporting cast bring a nice level of optimism and charm to the table to give the story a nice, well-rounded, balanced feel. Now, there is a fairly formulaic cycle within the story, and that basically is go to a new area, fight enemy, clear corruption, help the spirit move on, and you go to the next area. Outside of the main story, there is a bunch of side missions to complete, things like completing cursed chests, which give you different combat missions to get a reward. They might be timed, they might put you up against multiple waves of enemies, or they might say defeat X amount of enemies. Some of these are truly quite challenging. You can also go around and search for the 100 rot, and you can also deliver spirit mail. There's a bunch of things to do, and there's definitely a lot out there for the completionists. The map will also tell you what you're missing, so you can use that as a guide as well if you were wanting to 100% this game. Let's get into the environments, the world, and the areas you'll be exploring. Hands down, this game has got to be one of my favorite looking games in many years. The visuals and beautiful artistic expression shine so brightly with a variety of different landscapes that make this game an absolute joy to explore. Put plainly, this game is art. It is living, breathing, playable art. That's the best I can summarize it as. Ember Labs, the developers behind the game, have a very strong background in incredibly detailed animation, and that strength definitely comes through in this game. Every single part of the game was just awe-inspiring. Forests look so lush that you can see each individual grass blade, and even the water physics were fantastic. Caves were dark and atmospheric, and so too were the corrupted lands. Through different environmental set pieces, Ember Labs were able to communicate an array of different emotions without even one word of dialogue being spoken. It truly is a testament to their talent in world building and curating atmosphere. Now thankfully, given how beautiful this game is, Ember Lab had announced on literally the day before this game was released that this game will have a photo mode, and my god, it is such a welcome addition. I constantly find myself thinking, hey, that could be a cool wallpaper, or oh, I'd love a poster of that shot. And now that can be fully realized. The in-game world also takes a lot of inspiration from Balinese culture through its landscapes, its masks, and its music, and it makes for an incredibly unique, intriguing, and fascinating expanse to explore. It is beaming with culture, personality, and history. Now do be aware that this game isn't an open world game, however it's also not linear. It is a good mix between the two, where you'll know where you're going in the right direction, but it never feels restrictive where it limits inquisitive minds and explorers to one solid path. New areas do open up as you change the landscape, and there is a fast travel mechanic as well, so you will want to return to older areas once you've got new abilities and new tools to reach things that were once unobtainable. There are also new things in the environments that can give you access to new areas, such as a glowing flower that kind of acts like a hook shot or a grapple hook, and a bomb that floats rocks in the air, which can then be used to traverse new areas and reach new places. There are also some environmental puzzles sprinkled throughout the gameplay. They're not too difficult, but they are a great change of pace to balance out the combat. Exploring this game is also a treat, however the rewards do leave a little to be desired. Most of your rewards for finding items or finding items of interest will either be a hat for your rot or currency that can be spent at the hat shop. The hats are purely cosmetic, so for people who don't care about collecting the hats, you will simply just not care for this at all. As I said before, there are cursed chests in this game which give you combat missions, and the prizes for doing these are either getting a hat or getting currency that goes toward buying more hats. I can see this very small loop being frustrating with some players, as you don't feel like you've been rewarded for your efforts, especially since some of these cursed chests are very difficult, only to be rewarded with a fairly unsubstantial prize. For me though, I didn't mind. I liked seeing the rotten new hats. It always brought a smile to my face to see them scatter around me as I'm running through the environments with their new fancy hats. Throughout the game as well, you'll also come across small environmental puzzles, and completing these will give you karma, which can then be put toward Kina's abilities via her skill tree, which we'll get into later. Traversing around the world is fairly straightforward. As you see from the trailers, it's walking, running, swimming, climbing, and some simple platforming. Nothing that requires too much skill or prior knowledge to navigate. As you progress in the game, you will be required to do a little bit more platforming, such as grappling yourself mid-air, slowing down time, or blowing things up using the flying debris as platforms before they fall back to the ground. It's nothing new or too involved, but it's more than sufficient to keep the player happy. I'm sure I'm not alone in this opinion, but when I first saw the trailer, the rot were one of the more intriguing things about this game when it was first announced. A lot of people weren't exactly sure how these guys would factor into gameplay or how much of an impact they would have on Kena. But I'm happy to say that these guys are so cute and they inject so much character and personality into your play. They are an absolute integral part of your gameplay in this game, so it is going to be of your best interest to collect as many of these guys as possible. The rot can assist you in a variety of tasks, such as involving puzzles, helping you to move objects, help you restore the land, and even aid you in combat, which we'll get into in a bit. As you do progress in the game and collect more rot, your roster of abilities will also grow. So by the end of the game, the synchronicity between Kena and the rot, along with your upgraded abilities, is formidable and makes you feel incredibly powerful. Because there are 100 rot, and since they are hiding, the devs have done an incredibly smart thing and actually tell you how many rot are left in the area that you're in. This will then give an indication to the player as to how many they have left to collect, and it results in a real sense of progression. It also means that players are just aimlessly wandering around not knowing where the unfound rot are. The rot will also assist you in restoring the corrupted land. This restorative animation never gets old, and again, it really plays into the animation strengths of Ember Labs. They nailed the feeling of the corrupted eerie lands perfectly, and then to masterfully have them transition into areas full of life where grass and other fauna grows right before you. It was such a joy to watch and a joy to actually be a part of in my play. Not only is this a visual delight to watch, but once you have restored the land, new things will open up for you to do. Now moving into the combat, I was actually very pleasantly surprised at how charming it was. It is simplistic, but not so much that it's boring. In fact, I did get my ass handed to me on several occasions just because I underestimated the game. The enemies, especially in the second half of the game, do not mess around. Do not underestimate them, they will clean you out. There is a decent difficulty spike with some of these enemies, and even on normal difficulty, I had to retry a few bosses multiple times over. That being said, once you do finally beat the boss, it is so rewarding. I'm getting greedy. I'm getting too greedy! Oh, we got him, boys! We got him! Dude, that's such a good feeling, man. It's like, they are difficult. There are difficulty spikes, but once you get it, man, oh, it feels so good. It feels so good. Now, by collecting these rots, you are able to unleash more devastating attacks on your enemies. However, in a perfect decision to balance the game, you can't always use your rot. As they are timid, you need to fill up what's called a courage meter before they're allowed to go out and use whatever ability you want them to use. It forces the player to be more strategic in battle. It's a clean visualization as to what you have at your disposal, and players aren't able to simply spam the rot attacks from a distance to cheat the game. If your rot don't have a full courage meter, the only other option for combat is for you to get back out in the fight. This forces players to be more hands-on and not to be reliant on outside factors to win battles. It definitely makes Kena feel front and center in a fight, and the rot are truly your support. Aside from dealing their own damage, the rot can also distract enemies, leaving them open for your attacks. Finding new rot abilities and trying them out in combat was such a fun and rewarding part of this game too. Paired with your ability to control the rot is your magic staff. The staff in itself is a great asset in combat and will act as your all-in-one tool. You can do both light and heavy attacks, string those together for some combos, which is fairly standard in most games in this genre. It can then morph into a bow for some ranged attacks, and finally it can also act as a defensive tool that generates an energy shield around you. Again, none of this is groundbreaking or new, however Ember Lab have handled the combat brilliantly, where it does feel fresh and exciting throughout your play. As you do become more familiar with the game and as the enemies do get harder, you'll find yourself seamlessly shifting from staff attacks, instructing your rot, then getting right back into the action with some close combat. Then you throw up a shield, you dodge an attack, etc. I was quite surprised at how involved the fighting was at some points, especially against the more difficult enemies. I managed to string together some fantastic combos, and each combat encounter was rewarding and satisfying thanks to this rapid change mechanic. Again, it is simple enough that it works for this type of game and its length. It doesn't really change too much as you progress through the game, but it's complicated enough where players will feel like there's enough variety to keep them engaged for the entire game's length. The enemies in this game are also a massive strength. Early on in the game, the enemies are very easy to beat, however others will catch you off guard if you're not paying attention. Some enemies, mainly the mini bosses and regular bosses, are fast paced, they're aggressive, and at times can be unforgiving. In battle, especially up against a boss, you rarely come into contact with extra health. When a boss hits you, it hits you hard, so you need to pay attention because losing health in this game matters. In combat, your health does not regenerate either. There are usually 1 to 2 of these special flowers that you can send your rot to purify and get your health back. Once those 1 to 2 flowers are gone in the combat area, that's it. No more health for you until you leave the combat area. On top of that, you can't just send your rot to purify these flowers whenever you want. They need to have a full courage meter, which then gives you a nice balance or risk reward. Do you use your courage meter to fight the enemy, or do you use your courage meter to get some additional health? Now, to increase your max health, you need to find meditation spots. So as you can see, the game can be unforgiving if you're not paying attention to the enemies who take out massive chunks of your health, or if you're not exploring the environments, you're going to be stuck at the very base level health. Each enemy does have their own strength and weakness, and some have glowing weak points to hit for massive damage, and the game tends to mix a variety of these enemies to keep you on your toes. Combining your normal attacks with certain effects that the rot can have proved to be very interesting combat, and it was so much fun. To expand your combat skills, the game does give you a skill tree where you can upgrade your attacks. However, compared to other games, it is an incredibly simple skill tree. It is shaped like a skill tree, but the changes are fairly small and incremental. You might be able to jump a little higher in attack or get a couple of extra bows. Some of the acquired skills can be extremely strong and useful, however majority of them are just small incremental changes that don't offer too much variety in the core combat mechanics. The game thankfully never feels unfair either. You know that if you died, it's because you stuffed up. The moves are there, the controls are tight, and you have everything in your arsenal to beat the enemies. One slip up could spell your demise, but the game does such a good job of balancing difficulty that it's never frustrating. So we have established that the game is visually beautiful. However, I feel that it only reaches this height due to the accompanying soundtrack and the sound design. In terms of the sound design, it is so well done that you'll be completely immersed into this world. You can literally hear the wind blowing through blades of grass, you can hear waterfalls off in the distance, and everything to do with the sound is purposeful and intentional in creating atmosphere and a living world. It gives you the chance to stop to take it all in, take in all the ambience around you, and to fully absorb your surroundings. There are so many moments in the game where I just get caught up in those smaller tasks. Through its sound design, the game can truly take you to places of relaxation and zen, something only possible with exceptional sound design. The actual soundtrack also helps amplify every situation you find yourself in, and as I bought the deluxe version, I'm so happy to have access to the soundtrack because it has to be one of my favorite game soundtracks in recent years. The music and ambience take heavy inspiration from Balinese culture, and it fits perfectly with this game. Lots of strings, lots of percussion, and it just works so perfectly with every single moment in this game. Conversely, larger moments are even bigger with this fantastic soundtrack. The voice of Kena, Ayu, who was the daughter of the main composer for this game, has never done a voice acting job in her life. However, you would never guess that. Her voice fits so well with Kena's character model and with the overall atmosphere of the game. In fact, all of the characters are masterfully voiced. There was not one standout moment where someone felt weak. Everyone bought their A game. As stated before, the game does take inspiration from Balinese culture with its landscapes and music, however it also implements the use of masks. In this game, certain masks can grant you new abilities, such as being able to find the spirit that is tied to that particular mask, and also their belongings. It's also great in helping you find hidden rot, also revealing objects of importance and opening spirit barriers. Now let's get into the performance. As I said, I bought this for the PC, so I can't really comment on the performance of the PlayStation 4 or 5. However, I can safely say that on the PC it ran fine. Frames for the most part remained consistent, with minor drops when passing through different areas and the game took a second to load or transition to a new area. That being said, there are no loading screens in this game either, so a slight stutter here or there in exchange for no load screens. Hey, I'm a happy boy. It's a very well optimized game, and I had everything running on a high, and my PC is fairly average. I don't even have an SSD, and it ran smooth like butter. If you die in the game, respawn was literally about a second. It means that there's less time in loading screens and more time for you back in the action. One annoying thing that stood out to me, however, was the gameplay versus the cutscenes. The gameplay ran smooth as butter. However, when you get to a cutscene, it drops to 30 frames a second, and it's very, very jarring in comparison. When you're playing, you're in awe at looking at how smooth and nice everything looks, and although the animations were still amazing, I would have preferred if they stuck to the 60 frames per second rate to match the gameplay's smooth performance too. It would just make everything feel a little more cohesive. So what about bugs? I did run into a couple, nothing game breaking, just mild and amusing. He's going. Oi! Where's he going, mate? I think I think this right is a bit bugged out, boys. The game never crashed either. Again, it's super well optimized and very, very impressive. This is AAA standard coming from an indie studio, and it's their first ever game. Now moving on to the negatives. I don't really have too many negative things to say about this game, and what I do have to say are nitpicks. My biggest negative is that I feel like we could have spent more time on Kenna's backstory. I would have liked to learn a bit more about her. It's almost like the game assumes we know about the character already. In this department, I think the game suffers from its own success. They've made such an interesting game that players just want to find out more and every little thing about Kenna herself. However, at some points in the game, you end up finding more about other spirits like Taro rather than about Kenna herself. The game's length may be an issue for some, but I feel that it worked well for the story. Some people might not see the use in buying the deluxe version because the main additions are purely cosmetic. However, again, there's a cheaper option for people who don't want to spend that extra money. People also might not like that it's a digital only version. However, there are going to be physical copies available in November. You see what I mean? Every negative that I can think of has a solution or has an alternative. It's very, very hard to critique this game. I'm struggling. So my final thoughts on this game is that this game is superb and absolutely well worth the wait in my opinion. Its true strengths rely in its grandeur of storytelling and the masterful animations. Its perfect blend of story and visuals had me invested the entire way through. The gameplay mechanics aren't anything too groundbreaking, however with the addition of the rod and the wide variety of abilities tied to Kenna's staff, it's enough to make the experience feel fresh and revived. Everything about this game is also just so polished. It does a fantastic job at making every milestone hold meaning, rather than simply feel like it's just ticking off a box on a to-do list. Because of this, you feel the weight and impact of every achievement, every encounter, and every conversation. The characters, the music, and the landscapes masterfully come together to form what has been one of my most enjoyable experiences in gaming I've had in years. It doesn't break new ground in terms of being a third-person action-adventure game, but this is an absolute blast of a game and one that you need to be picking up. It oozes personality, passion, and it's just mind-blowing that this quality of game has come from a dev company who has never made a game before. I'm so glad I paid extra to go above and beyond to support Ember. It was money well spent. But guys, that is my review for Kenna Bridge of Spirits. It was a long one, but my god am I passionate about this game. It is a game that you absolutely need to get. Let me know in the comments down below. Are you getting it? Have you got it? And if you have, what are your thoughts on it? As always, if you did like the review, please go ahead, leave it a like, and also subscribe to the channel. We are trying to get to 1,000 subs. As I said at the start of the review as well, I do now have an official Pixel Sean Discord, so if you want to join that and hang out, link to that is in the description as well. But that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know your thoughts on Kenna in the comments down below, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.